Yeah. Hello! Welcome to Hobbit Story Song. How are you doing today? We are going to be reading the story. But, first off, we are going to be reading the Bible, then we are going to be reading the Hobbit, then we are going... I'm sorry, I did not do that right. First we are going to be reading the Bible, then we are going to be doing the synopsis, then we are going to be doing the Hobbit. Make sure... I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss another video. Here's my dad to do the Bible.
Hello, we are on Luke chapter 14. This is the English Standard Version. Let me move this in a little closer so that y'all can see my nostrils. Okay, all right, ready? This is the English Standard Version of Luke chapter 14. One Sabbath, when he went to dine at the house of a ruler of the Pharisees, they were watching him carefully. And behold, there was a man before him who had dropsy. I'm not sure what dropsy is.
Abnormal swelling of the body.
Abnormal swelling of the body. And Jesus responded to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. Then he took him and healed him, and sent him away. And he said to them, "Which of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on a Sabbath day, will not immediately pull him out?" And they could not reply to these things. Now he told a parable to those who were invited when he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, "When you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. Unless you're the Queen of England, then you don't have to follow that, because no, that's not scripture. That's true. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, 'Give your place to this person,' and then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, 'Friend, move up higher.' Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at the table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted." He said also to the man who had invited him, "When you give a dinner or a banquet, do not invite your friends or your brothers or your relatives or rich neighbors, lest they also invite you in return and you be repaid. But when you give a feast, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, the blind, and you will be blessed, because they cannot repay you, for you will be repaid at the resurrection of the just." When one of those who reclined at the table with him heard these things, he said to him, "Blessed is everyone who will eat bread in the kingdom of God." But he said to him, "A man once gave a great banquet and invited many. And at the time for the banquet, he sent his servant to say to those who had been invited, 'Come, for everything is now ready.' But they all alike began to make excuses. The first said to him, 'I have bought a field, and I must go out and see it. Please have me excused.' And another said, 'I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, and I go to examine them. Please have me excused.' And another said, 'I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come.' So the servant came and reported these things to his master. Then the master of the house became angry and said to his servant, 'Go out quickly to the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in the poor and crippled and blind and lame.' And the servant said, 'Sir, what you commanded has been done, and still there is room.' And the master said to the servant, 'Go out to the highways and hedges, and compel people to come in, that my house may be filled. For I tell you, none of those men who were invited shall taste my banquet.' Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and and mother, and wife and children, and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, "This man began to build and was not able to finish." Or, what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Salt is good, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is of no use either for the soil or for the manure pile. It is thrown away. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. And that is the end of Luke chapter 14. And I hope that God is richly blessing you in the reading of his word. So yesterday, or actually it was 2 days ago, we read Luke chapter 13, in which the dwarves, I think they basically...
Luke 13, huh?
Luke,
You said Luke 13.
did I say Luke 13?
Yes.
The Hobbit 13. Okay, so yesterday, or actually it was...
What actually happens.
Actually, it was 2 days ago. We read The Hobbit, chapter 13. And in that chapter, they were going down the tunnel because they were stuck there for maybe a couple of hours. And the dwarves decided they were just done with it. And they said, "Hey, get me out of here. I can't stand to be in this tunnel." And they just ran straight down the tunnel. Like they basically tripped over poor Bilbo, and Bilbo was flattened like a pancake, if you can imagine a hobbit being flat like a pancake. And the dwarves went right down, and they saw all the treasure there, and they just started filling their pockets, and they got some backpacks, and they started putting all the jewels in their backpacks. And poor Bilbo, I don't think he got anything, did he? Nothing. Nothing at all.
We got a gold cup. Everything that you hear my dad say is opposite, by the way.
No, not exactly everything, but
Most of the stuff.
I know that Dad enjoys doing the false synopsis, so it's okay to let him do it, okay, boys? You don't need to parade him out. Hey, Becca!
Hey, Bacon.
So, what actually happened was, they let Bilbo go in first so that he could check out and see if the dragon's there and see if they can go through the tunnel. And it turns out the dragon was gone.
Basically, so that if the dragon was there, then Bilbo could be the one that got eaten and not throw an open shield.
1 second.
Not exactly. Also partially because he had the ring and it's a lot easier to hide for him. So what happened after that was he went over and grabbed the... I forget what it was called, but it was also called the Heart of the Mountain.
The Arkenstone.
Yeah, the Arkenstone. I knew it started with an A. And then,
And it was giant and fit in his pocket, which tells me he has some ginormous pockets.
yeah, it was so big he couldn't fit it in his hand.
But it did fit in his pocket.
To
My
be
golly.
fair.
And the dwarves didn't even notice.
Yeah. To be fair, he is a hobbit,
He is
and his hands are probably in scale with his size,
He
so
is
his hands
the
are
size of
probably small. Like this big. But still,
Like the size of your palm.
Yeah. Still. And then what happens is he goes over and he's like, hey, can somebody get me a light? And then he goes over to the other side of the cavern and drops the light by accident, and it goes out. And he panics for a little bit, and then... Shh, JJ. Wrong franchise. Sorry.
And they're babies.
And the lights flicker, and the weeping
they're
angels going...
And they're babies.
Okay, you too. No more Doctor Who for you.
No more Doctor Who.
Not possible.
No more Doctor Who for
Okay,
you.
shush.
Okay, then they all go in and grab as much gems as they can hold. And Thorin desperately searches for the Arkenstone and doesn't find it. Because it's in Bilbo's pocket.
It's in his pocket.
He was hired to be a burglar after all.
Yeah. And then what happens after that is they go out and they find it's like morning, kind of afternoon-ish. And then they talk for a bit about where they should go to eat. And they go to this old outpost that used to be like a border patrol kind of thing. So they go over there. It takes most of the day, and then they eat, and that is where they currently are. And they're talking about where the dragon's gone, and like what's going on, and why it's gone for so long, and etc., etc., etc. And I'm gonna cut to Dad before I ramble forever.
Yeah.
Very wise.
Very wise.
very
wise.
Wise. Okay, so I need people to be quiet.
You need a volunteer?
I don't know about
Yeah, I need a volunteer for someone to be quiet.
Okay, everyone.
I've got lollipops. Viking starting now.
All right, so I need to sit back a little bit because my back is hurting a little bit. So I am going to sit here and read chapter 14 to you. And I hope that you enjoy this chapter. It is called Fire and Water.
And the first word is...
Do you remember what it is?
Do you want the lollipop?
Okay, so chapter 14 is called Fire and Water. Now, if you wish, like the dwarves, to hear news of Smaug, you must go back again to the evening when he smashed the door and flew off in rage 2 days before. The men of the lake town Esgaroth were mostly indoors, for the breeze was from the black east and chill, but a few were walking on the quays and watching, as they were fond of doing, the stars shine out from the smooth patches of the lake as they opened in the sky. From their town, the lonely mountain was mostly screened by the low hills at the far end of the lake, through a gap in which the running river came down from the north. Only its high peak could they see in clear weather, and they looked seldom at it, for it was ominous and drear even in the light of morning. Now it was lost and gone, blotted in the dark. Suddenly it flickered back to view. A brief glow touched it and faded. "Look," said one. "The lights again! Last night the watchmen saw them start and fade from midnight until dawn. Something is happening up there." "Perhaps the king under the mountain is forging gold," said another. "It is long since he went north. It is time the songs began to prove themselves again." "Which king?" said another grim voice. "As like as not it is the marauding fire of the dragon, the only king under the mountain we have ever known." "You are always foreboding gloomy things," said the others. "Anything from floods to poisoned fish. Think of something cheerful." Then suddenly a great light appeared in the low place in the hills, and the northern end of the lake turned golden. "The king beneath the mountain," they shouted. "His wealth is like the sun, his silver like the fountain, his rivers golden run. The river is running gold from the mountain," they cried, and everywhere windows were opening and feet were hurrying. There was once more a tremendous excitement and enthusiasm. But the grim-voiced fellow ran hot-foot to the master. "The dragon is coming, or I am a fool," he cried. "Cut the bridges! To arms! To arms!" Is cutting the bridges really going to help them against a dragon?
No.
It's just a thought that I just had. Okay, anyway. Then warning trumpets were suddenly sounded, and echoes along the rocky shores. The cheering stopped, and the joy was turned to dread. So it was that the dragon did not find them quite unprepared. Before long, so great was his speed, they could see him as a spark of fire rushing towards them and growing ever huger and more bright. And not the most foolish doubted that the prophecies had gone rather wrong. Still, they had a little time. Every vessel in the town was filled with water. Every warrior was armed. Every arrow and dart was ready. And the bridge to the land was thrown down and destroyed before the roar of Smog's terrible approach grew loud, and the lake rippled red as fire beneath the awful beating of his wings. Amid shrieks and wailing and the shouts of men, he came over them, swept toward the bridges, and was foiled. The bridge was gone, and his enemies were on an island in deep water, too deep and dark and cool for his liking. If he plunged into it, a vapor and a steam would rise enough to cover all the land with a mist for days. But the lake was mightier than he. It would quench him before he could pass through. Roaring, he swept back over the town. A hail of dark arrows leapt up and snapped and rattled on its scales and jewels, and their shafts fell back, kindled by his breath, burning and hissing into the lake. No fireworks you ever imagined equaled the sights that night. At the twanging of the bows and the shrilling of the trumpets, the dragon's wrath blazed to its height, till he was blind and mad with it. No one had dared to give battle to him for many an age, nor would they have dared now if it had not been for the grim-voiced man, Bard was his name, who ran to and fro, cheering on the archers and urging the master to order them to fight to the last arrow. Fire leapt from the dragon's jaws. He circled for a while, high in the air above them, lighting all the lake. The trees by the shores shone like copper and like blood, with leaping shadows of dense black at their feet. Then down he swooped straight through the arrow storm, reckless in his rage, taking no heed to turn his scaly sides toward his foes, seeking only to set their town ablaze. Fire leapt from thatched roofs and wooden beam ends as it hurtled down and past and round again though all had been drenched with water before he came. Once more water was flung by 100 hands, whether a spark appeared. Once more water was flung by 100 hands wherever a spark appeared. Black swirled the dragon. A sweep of his tail, and the roof of the great house crumbled and smashed down. Flames unquenchable sprang high into the night. Another swoop, and another house, and then another sprang afire and hilt, and still no arrow hindered Smog or hurt him more than a fly from the marbles. A fly from the marshes, no marbles. I'm having trouble getting comfortable, sorry. Already men were jumping into the water on every side. Women and children were being huddled into laden boats in the market pool. Weapons were flung down. There was mourning and weeping where but a little time ago the old songs of mirth to come had been sung about the dwarves. Now men cursed their names. The master himself was turning to his great gilded boat, hoping to row away in the confusion and save himself. Soon all the town would be deserted and burned down to the surface of the lake. Already men were jumping into the water on every side. Women and children were being huddled into laden boats in the market pool. Weapons were flung down. There was mourning and weeping where but a little time ago the old... I already read that, right?
Yes.
Soon all the town would be deserted and burned down to the surface of the lake. Sorry. That was the dragon's hope. They could all get into boats for all he cared. There he could have fine sport hunting them, or they could stop till they starved. Let them try to get to land, and he would be ready. Soon he would set all the shoreland woods ablaze and wither every field and pasture. Just now he was enjoying the sport of town baiting more than he had enjoyed anything for years. But there was still a company of archers that held their ground among the burning houses. Their captain was Bard, grim-voiced and grim-faced, whose friends had accused him of prophesying floods and poisoned fish, though they knew his worth and courage. He was a descendant in the long line of Girion, Lord of Dale, whose wife and child had escaped down the running river from the ruin long ago. Now he shot with a great yew bow till all his arrows but one were spent. The flames were near him. His companions were leaving him. He bent his bow for the last time. Suddenly, out of the dark, something fluttered to his shoulder. He started, but it was only an old thrush. Unafraid, it perched by his ear, and it brought him news. Marveling, he found he could understand its tongue, for he was of the race of Dale. "Wait, wait," it said to him. "The moon is rising. Look for the hollow of the left breast as he flies and turns above you." And while Bard paused in wonder, it told him of tidings up in the mountain and of all that it had heard. Then Bard drew his bow-string to his ear. The dragon was circling back, flying low, and as he came to the moon rose above the eastern shore and silvered his great wings. "Arrow," said the bowman, "Black Arrow, I have saved you to the last. You have never failed me, and always I have recovered you. I had you from my father, and he from old. If ever you came from the forges of the true king under the mountain, go now and speed well." The dragon swooped once more, lower than ever, and as he turned and dived down, his belly glittered while with sparkling fires of gems in the moon. But not in one place. The great bow twanged. The black arrow sped past. The great bow twanged. The black arrow sped straight from the string, straight for the hollow by the left breast where the foreleg was flung wide. In it smote and vanquished barb, shaft, and feather. So fierce was the fight. With a shriek that deafened men, felled trees, and split stone. Smog shot spouting into the air, turned over, and crashed down from on high in ruin. Full on the town he fell. His last throws splintered it to sparks and gleeds. The lake roared in, a vast steam leapt up, white in the sudden dark under the moon. There was a hiss, a gushing white and elegant... Sorry, I'm having trouble reading today. There was a hiss, a gushing whirl, and then silence. What did I say?
White and elegant.
I don't know what I'm... Like, I must be on acid. Yeah, I am pretty tired. And that was the end of Smog and Esgaroth, but not of Bard. The waxing moon rose higher and higher, and the wind grew loud and cold. It twisted the white fog into bending pillars and hurrying clouds, and drove it off to the west to scatter in tattered shreds over the marshes before Mirkwood. Then the many boats could be seen, dotted dark on the surface of the lake, and down the wind came the voices of the people of Esgaroth, lamenting their lost town and goods and ruined houses. But they had really much to be thankful for, had they thought of it, though it could hardly be expected that they should just then 3/4 of the people of the town had at least escaped alive. Their woods and fields and pastures and cattle and most of their boats remained undamaged, and the dragon was dead. What that meant they had not yet realized. They gathered in mournful crowds upon the western shores, shivering in the cold wind, and their first complaints and anger were against the master, who had left the town so soon, while some were still willing to defend it. He may have a good head for business, especially his own business, some murmured, but he is no good when anything serious happens, and they praised the courage of Bard and his last mighty shot. If only he had not been killed, they all said, we would make him a king. Bard, the dragon shooter of the line of Garden, alas that he is lost. And in the very midst of their talk, a tall figure stepped from the shadows. He was drenched with water. His black hair hung wet over his face and shoulders, and a fierce light was in his eyes. Bard is not lost, he cried. He dived from Esgaroth when the enemy was slain. I am Bard of the line of Girion. I am the slayer of the dragon. King Bard! King Bard! They shouted, but the master ground his chattering teeth. Girion was the lord of Dale, not king of Esgaroth, he said. In the lake town we have always elected masters from among the old and wise, and have not endured the rule of mere fighting men. Let King Bard go back to his own kingdom. Dale is not freed by his own... Dale is now freed by his valor, and nothing hinders his return, and any that wish can go with him, if they prefer the cold stones under the shadow of the mountain to the green shores of the lake. The wise will stay here and hope to rebuild our town and enjoy again in time its peace and riches. We will have King Bard, the people near at hand shouted in reply. We have had enough of the old men and the money counters, and people further off took up the cry, up the bowmen and down the money bags, till the clamor echoed along the shore. I am the last man to undervalue Bard the bowman, said the master warily, for Bard now stood close beside him. He has tonight earned an eminent place in the roll of the benefactors of our town, and he is worthy of many imperishable songs. But why, O people? And here the master rose to his feet and spoke very loudly and clear. Why do I get all your blame? For what fault am I to be deposed? Excuse me. Same difference, right? Who aroused the dragon from his slumber, I might ask? Who obtained of us rich gifts and ample help, and led us to believe that old songs could come true? Who played on our soft hearts and our pleasant fancies? What sort of gold have they sent down the river to reward us? Dragonfire and ruin. From whom we should we claim the recompense of our damage and aid for our widows and orphans? As you see, the master had not got his position for nothing. The result of his words was that for the moment the people quite forgot their idea of a new king, and turned their angry thoughts toward Thorin and his company. Wild and bitter words were shouted from many sides, and some of those who had before sung the old songs loudest were now heard as loudly crying that the dwarves had stirred the dragon up against them deliberately. Fools, said Bard, why waste words and wrath on those unhappy creatures? Doubtless they perished first in fire, before Smaug came to us. Then, even as he was speaking, the mountain lying without guard or owner, and he fell suddenly silent. He thought of the master's words, and of Dale rebuilt and filled with golden bells, if he could but find the man. At length he spoke again. This is no time for angry words, master, or for considering weighty plans of change. There is work to do. I serve you still, though after a while I may think again of your words, and go north with any that will follow me. Then he strode off to help in the ordering of the camps, and in the care of the sick and the wounded. But the master scowled at his back as he went, and remained stirring on the ground. He thought much, but said little, unless it was to call loudly for men to bring him fire and food. Now everywhere Bard went, he found talk running like fire among the people, considering the vast treasure that was now unguarded. Men spoke of the recompense over and to men spoke of the recompense for all their harm that they would soon get from it, and wealth over and to spare, with which to buy rich things from the south. And it cheered them greatly in their plight. That was as well, for the night was bitter and miserable. Shelters could be contrived, for few the master had done. And there was little food. Even the master went short. Many took ill of wet and cold and sorrow that night, and afterwards died, who had escaped uninjured from the ruin of the town. And in the days that followed there was much sickness and greater hunger. Meanwhile, Bard took the lead and ordered things as he wished, though always in the master's name, and he had a hard time in proclamation Oh my gosh. He had a hard task to govern the people and direct the preparations for their protection and housing. Probably most of them would have perished in the winter that now hurried after autumn if help had not been to hand. But help came swiftly, for Bard at once had speedy messengers sent up the river to the forest to ask the aid of the king of the elves of the wood. And these messengers had found a host already on the move, although it was then only the third day after the fall of Smog. The Elven King had received news from his own messengers and from the birds that loved his folk, and already knew much of what had happened. Very great indeed was the commotion among all things with wings that dwelt on the borders of the desolation of the dragon. The air was filled with circling flocks, and their swift-flying messengers flew here and there across the sky. Above the borders, the forest there was ripening. Above the borders of the forest there was whistling. I am having a very seriously difficult time tonight. I apologize. Crying and piping, far over Mirkwood, tidings spread. Smog is dead! Leaves rustled and startled, ears were lifted. Even before the Elven King rode forth, the news had passed west, right to the pine woods of the misty mountains. Beorn had heard it in his wooden house, and the goblins were at council in their caves. That will be the last we shall hear of Thorin Oakenshield, I fear, said the king. He would have done better to have remained my guest, if It is an ill wind all the same, he added, that blows no one any good, for he too had not forgotten the legend of the wealth of Thror. So it was that Bard's messengers found him now marching with many spearmen and bowmen, and crows were gathering thick above him, for they thought that war was awakening again, such as had not been in those parts for a long age. But the king, when he recovered the prayers of Bard, when he received the prayers of Bard, had pity, for he was the lord of a good and kindly people, so turning his march, which had at first been direct toward the mountain, he hastened now down the river to the long lake. He had not boats or rafts enough for his host, and they were forced to go the slower way by foot. But great store of goods he sent ahead by water. Still, elves are light-footed, and though they were not in these days much used to the marches and the treacherous lands between the forest and the lake, their going was swift. Only 5 days after the death of the dragon, they came upon the shores and looked on the ruins of the town. Their welcome was good, as may be expected, and the men and their master were ready to make any bargain for the future in return for the Elven King's aid. Their plans were soon made, with the women and the children, the old and the unfit. The master remained behind, and with him were some men of crafts, and many skilled the timber. Oh, I skipped a line. And many skilled elves, and they busied themselves felling trees and collecting the timber sent down from the forest. Then they set about raising many huts by the shore against the oncoming winter, and also under the master's direction they began the planning of a new town. Master's direction, they began the planning of a new town. What? Under the master's direction. Okay. Designed more fair and large even than before, but not in the same place. They removed northward, higher up the shore, for ever after they had dread of the water where the dragon lay. He would never again return to the floor of the shallows. There, for ages, his huge bones could be seen in calm weather amid the ruined piles of the old town. But few dared to cross the cursed spot, and none dared to dive into the shivering water or recover the precious stones that fell from the rotting carcass. But all the men of arms who were still able, and the most of the elven king's array, got ready to march north to the mountain. It was thus that in 11 days from the ruin of the mountain, the head of their host passed the rock gates at the end of the lake and came into the desolate lands. That's the end of that chapter. I am having too much trouble today for some reason. So I am going to cut it there. I hope you're enjoying the story. Sorry that I'm a little bit not quite...
Tongue-tied a bit?
Yeah, tongue-tied, not quite reading very well today. But I hope that you enjoyed the story. Kimberly's got a picture to show you.
Say hi to Rebecca. She said hi.
Hey, Becca.
Hi, Bacon.
Hey, did you finish that marine thing that you were making? Where's that?
Oh, yeah, I did finish that.
So, Kimberly made something for Ben that is very spectacular. So she is.
It's just a sketch.
It is just a sketch. Okay, let's be humble about it. But it is rather spectacular. So I'm gonna make her coerce her, manipulate her into sharing it.
Wait.
This is literally on the back of a worksheet.
Before we show...
Wait. Show the worksheet. Here's the worksheet.
Oh, gosh.
On the other side of this.
Before we show that, can I
Okay.
show what I drew? So, I was wondering if Ben would, like, what weapon you would then like me to draw.
Ben's
so there's
not
a
here.
1, 2,
Yeah, he's gonna send it to him.
3, 4, and then there are 2 Minecraft players. This one is Ben, this
What
one
does
is
that
me.
say?
And then
I need to fix the scribbler.
And then on the back of
It's
it,
not bad.
that's me right
Still
there, and
scribbles.
then this is Ben.
This one's too high.
And I know it's backwards, but it says that Ben is here, I'm right there, and it says for the
The best
best
kind of-
marine ever. It's snowing. I love you, Ben. I miss you, Ben. So here is what Kim made.
1, 2, 3, 4. I declare thumb war. 5, 6, 7, 8.
You can't beat these thumbs.
Dead.
You can't beat
Dead, I
this
tell you.
guy.
Okay.
Okay. Here is the
This
picture. Of course, this is on the worksheet.
Read Becca's comment.
I read it.
Ta-da!
Read Becca's comments.
So this is pretty good, actually. Way better than anything I would ever be able to do. So, all right, there you go.
The wings
All
are
right,
not so much.
she made a thumb war. Yay! All right, so sorry that I was not quite feeling well. Oh wow, I'm not even plugged in. That's how. Yeah, we read the Bible. All right, and I didn't have as much trouble reading the Bible as I did the Hobbit tonight for some reason. All right, so we are going To Rebecca says, "Wow, Kimmy, that's really cool."
Thank
You
you,
think-
Becca.
You think this is cool? I got some coffee right here.
Oh, I can't like your comment while I'm
Nice.
doing the live stream. Sorry.
It's really yummy.
All right, so good night. We'll see you not tomorrow, but the next day. All right, God bless. Bye.